This is Steve Smith at WCG Patient Radio. WCG is a company focused on the ethical, safe, and efficient conduct of clinical trials for the benefit of patients with unmet medical needs. We're speaking today with Bryce Olson, who is the global strategist for Intel's Health and Life Sciences Group, is in a clinical trial that was and is using precision medicine as well as genomic sequencing and remote approaches for his stage 4 prostate cancer, and is an outspoken patient advocate for the area of genomics and precision medicine with a powerful message on how this saves lives, including his own life. He is a musician and started a movement that uses the power of music to build awareness for new ways to fight cancer and bring molecular testing and precision medicine to other advanced cancer patients. He founded FACTS, which stands for Fighting Advanced Cancer Through Songs. Bryce Olson is a sought-after speaker, has been featured in numerous national publications, including the Washington Post, and has numerous YouTube videos in which he speaks and sings and gets the message out about how patients should repeat to their doctors, "Sequence me." We're pleased to have him speak with us today. Hello, Bryce.
Hi, Steve. That was a good intro. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You have an amazing career as a strategist for precision medicine at Intel, and I'm guessing that work is fueled by a strong sense of purpose related to your own cancer diagnosis. Tell us about how those things came to be both happening at the same time, that you work at Intel and you have this cancer diagnosis, and specifically what your cancer and treatment has to do with precision medicine and genomic sequencing.
Yeah. Well, no, you're 100% right that my career at Intel, specifically in the Health and Life Sciences Group with a focus on genomics and precision medicine, is 100% fueled by my cancer experience. And I think it was really kind of just driven by frustration that what I started to see in my work was happening in research, but it just wasn't being brought into the clinic. And to probably explain that best, let me just take you back to 2014 when I got diagnosed with really aggressive metastatic prostate cancer. I was really surprised. I was taken back by this in a huge way because there's really no history of prostate cancer in my family. I exercise every day. I'm very fit. I took care of my body. And to have this happen to me was just such a huge surprise. And I didn't really know what to do. I was panicked. And so I followed my doctor's orders, and I quickly kind of fell into what I would see as the standard of care. It was really kind of a one-size-fits-all paradigm where, regardless of whether we're unique individuals, we're just getting the same standard of care treatments. And, I went through surgery and it didn't work. I went through standard chemotherapy using a drug that was developed back in the 50s. And though I got probably about 9 months before my cancer started growing again, I paid for it with 6 months of, just really chemo-induced sickness, epic fatigue, blistering mouth sores, neuropathy in my feet that I still feel today. And I started to get really frustrated because once those drugs started to not work, the amount of standard of care drugs that were in front of me were really limited. And I started to worry that I wasn't going to make it, that I wouldn't see my kid get out of elementary school, and that I was going to die, And so when I get back to work, and I start working in the Health and Life Sciences Group, I see the polar opposite. I see massive amount of innovation going on in research settings. I see, bioinformaticists that are taking all this massive amount of data that is coming off of genomic sequencing machines, and they're looking at what's driving disease inside of the DNA. And they're seeing mutations and genomic alterations that actually drive disease. And then they're coming up with drugs that go after those. And that is really kind of precision medicine. And I got really frustrated because it wasn't happening to me. I'm seeing all this advancement happening in a research setting that's happening at, you could argue, exponential rates. But what's happening in the clinic was happening just like step function, very linearly. And so I went to my doctor and I said, hey, I want to get sequenced. I want to get my cancer sequenced. I want to understand what's driving my disease in the DNA. And they were a little surprised by that. They hadn't really heard patients requesting that. And, this was back in, 2014. But after pushing a while, they made that work for me. And sure enough, I had genomic variants that were actionable. There were mutations that were in a pathway, a cell signaling pathway, that there were actual drugs in phase 1 development that offered the promise to shut my cancer down. And I chased those drugs. I went to a clinical trial at Cedars-Sinai in Beverly Hills, and it worked. I was able to shut my cancer down for 2 years because I got the right drug, right? I found the right drug for the right person at the right time. I found a drug that was built for what my cancer was using to grow. And so I became a huge proponent of that. And, ever since then, I've been following that approach. It's kind of a rinse and repeat. If I get a new tumor, I go diagnose it. I find out what's driving it through either a liquid biopsy that just looks at, what's being sloughed off from dead cancer cells into the blood, or I go and actually have it biopsied and then profiled. And then whatever I find out, I take action on it in a more of an individualized way. And that's driven my work at Intel as well, and just driving new innovation in that space.
I know Intel is famous for chips and, of course, massive computing that's made possible, which is a big part of genomic research and that kind of medical science you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
So did you find that your physicians were amenable to the routine once they got going with sequencing you, that it's easier now for you to go down that path and say time again, and they're checking you for that? Is it a kind of a custom battle each time you need to be resequenced?
It's a great question. I would say there's a lot has changed between 2014 and 2020. When I first did this back in 2014, there really wasn't commercial diagnostic labs that would do this on behalf of a patient if their doctor, farmed it out. There were limited, mostly large academic cancer centers that were doing their own kind of homegrown testing. And that's how I originally got sequenced. I was doing it in Portland, Oregon at Oregon Health Sciences University, OHSU, and they had their own, they called it Gene Trails. It was a test that looked for genomic alterations in cancer, maybe about 30 or 40. And that was all I needed. I found a match when I did that. But, if you flash forward to today, there are massive, well-funded companies like Tempus, Foundation Medicine. All of these companies have massive amounts of genomic data along with treatment and outcome data that they've been able to triangulate. Like Tempus has a third of all cancer patients' data now, they feel. And so when you get these large, massive databases that have genomic treatment and outcome data in it, and then you send them over your sample, they have a lot of data they can look at and compare you against what they see in their databases. And I just feel like today, if you're an advanced cancer patient and you're going through the standard of care and you're running out of options and nobody is talking to you about genomics and how to profile your cancer in a unique way that's unique to you, then you got to demand it still. I mean, I still see doctors that don't offer this today, even in 2020. So as a patient, you still got to demand it. And if you demand it, there's plenty of paths to get that stuff available for you now.
You're in a clinical trial right now, and I know that requires travel to get to the site, that it's in a different state from where you live. And many patients with many other diseases are, as well as cancers, are concerned about the need to continue their clinical trial medications, yet they can't just go to trial visits as they could before COVID. Hospital may not be functioning that way right now, or there's just too much of a risk to their immune systems. How has your routine of trial visits been changed by COVID and the need to protect yourself from exposure? Are there ways remote visits are being done for you?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and it's funny. I'm starting to change the way I view this almost by the day. And what I mean by that is, so yeah, as you said, so I'm in a clinical trial that the site that I go to for this trial is in San Diego. I live in Portland, Oregon. In March, when things started to change and things started to get really restricted, and there was a fear, especially in places like New York and New Jersey, where it was just starting to get out of control, I got scared. I am immunocompromised. I've had cancer for a long time. The last thing I wanted to do was die in the short term of some respiratory virus when I've been trying to fight this thing for 6.5 years, and I've had success. So I hunkered down. I stopped going to my trial. I missed 2 different cycles for it, and I wanted to try to bring the trial to me. So when I looked at the components of the clinical trial for me, I saw 4. There were labs. There was the clinical visit itself. There was the imaging, to understand what's, where the disease is through CT scans and MRIs and bone scans and stuff like that. And then for me, I had an infusion of an immunotherapy drug. And what I was able to do was get most of that stuff delivered to me. So my drug trial consists of 2 drugs, an oral drug, a pill, and then an infusion. Well, I could get the oral drug shipped to my house. That wasn't a problem. I could do clinical visits via, telemedicine, right? I think in some ways, the technology for telehealth and telemedicine has been there for so long. And COVID has been a real driver for adoption of this. And it's really easy to get on the phone or get on a video conference with my doctor and just go over things. Like, that was easy. Labs was actually fairly easy as well. There's a lot of mobile phlebotomists that can come to your house and draw blood. But the infusion, I just couldn't do. I couldn't figure out a way to do that remotely. And so I eventually mustered up the courage to travel. And I'll tell you what, I think that if you take the right precautions, if you wear an N95 mask, or at least just somehow double up on a mask that's really going to be effective, maybe take the extra precaution of wearing a face shield or at least glasses, and just be really, really diligent, to not be touching your eyes, don't be touching your nose, don't eat anything without washing your hands, and just be very, very cautious. I think you can, as an immunocompromised patient, travel and be safe. I don't think I would advise doing what I did, which was missing treatments. I'm talking to you, Steve, right now, wearing this back brace because I'd have a massive spinal fusion because cancer got away from me and actually started strangling my spinal cord, and I had to have emergency spinal surgery about 6 weeks ago. If I would have stayed on the trial and not skipped it, would I have found that early? I don't know. And I don't know if it would have made a difference, but looking back on it now, I think you can take the right precautions and still be very careful and still go through with your trial and do travel. You just have to be extra careful and extra diligent.
Yes, there are some procedures that's not possible, I guess, to do outside of a medical center. And it is, although heartening to see more flexibility happening in some of those obstacles to taking medicines at home, for those that can be taken at home. For the flexibility that we should see are the kinds of obstacles that should be removed. Like if payers didn't traditionally cover something in the home because they wanted to make sure there was good medical supervision, but now there's a different world with COVID, and that obstacle should be removed. But you're talking about something that needs to be done in a clinic, I imagine. Yeah,
I am. I think, to your point, if there's things that if you're not on a trial, for example, and you're just, you're going to your doctor visit every, month, and you're getting your oral drug, and all that stuff can be done remotely. You can do virtual visits. You could have your drug shipped to your house. There's a lot of things that you can do remotely. And, in some ways, I think COVID's been, I hate to say it, but a blessing to accelerate technology innovation that's been there for a long time and just hasn't been adopted. And the best example of that would be telehealth and telemedicine. But, I think if you're so scared of COVID that you're dropping out of your trial, or you're just not going to go and explore different options because you're so freaked out about COVID, I think that's where you have to you have to look at it differently and maybe just take a little bit more risk, because this thing's going to be around for a while. We don't know when we're going to get a vaccine. I think there's, more knowledge today on if you were to get sick, drugs like dexamethasone and other things like that might be able to stave off an acute respiratory attack. And we're knowing more about those kind of things. So I wouldn't put it off, especially since doing so could, get you in a situation like what happened to me, where the cancer got away from me and I had to take emergency action to keep it contained. I don't think patients want to do that either,
So with all this going on in your life, you actually, like a lot of patients, sometimes people may forget that patients have other aspects to their lives too. And you show lots of leadership in educating others and broadcasting the word about genomic sequencing in an engaging way. Tell us about your music. You founded the organization called FACTS, F-A-C-T-S, an acronym. And I have seen your great YouTube video of you in a recording studio playing the guitar and singing with a group of very talented musicians. Who are they, and how did that all come together?
Yeah. No, it was a really fun project. I was, I'm fortunate through Intel that I'm able to reach the business side of cancer. And what I mean by that is, we're dealing all the time with pharmaceutical companies and researchers and doctors and bioinformaticists and other technologists and entrepreneurs in the space. But I don't get to deal with patients that much because I'm more on the business side. And so I was looking for ways that I could engage with other cancer patients or people who care and love cancer patients, like maybe their children. And I was trying to figure out, well, what could I do to reach them? And I thought, well, music might be an interesting approach. If I could use music as a way to raise awareness for a new way to fight cancer through genomics, then that might be an interesting approach. And so I started talking. I'm a hobbyist. I love writing songs. And I started talking to musician friends in Portland, Oregon about this desire to put together an album that would be, really focused on, building awareness for this new way to fight cancer and what people going through this, feel and experience. And when I started talking to people about it, I got a lot of excitement from musicians in Portland, and that kind of spread to other musicians and singers across Portland. And that even led to some interesting meetings with some fairly well-known folks like Jenny Conley from the Decemberists and Martha Davis from the Motels. Those are bands that a lot of people know. Those two people are cancer survivors themselves. And so I put together kind of an ensemble of musicians and singers, many of them which are cancer survivors themselves, to help me put this album together. So I wanted to use music as a way to raise awareness for a new way to fight cancer. Music's always been very therapeutic for me as a way to process feelings of, frustration and anger and sadness. And those stories are what are told in this Facts album that we put together. And early on, I just started to talk to musicians and performers across Portland, where I live, and I told them about this project, how I wanted to, help reach people who wouldn't necessarily be thinking about genomics, but maybe reach them through music. And I started to get a lot of interest locally in Portland, and that also led to, new introductions to powerhouse gospel singers and performers like Jonna Street, who was an American Idol contestant, and then Saida Wright, who used to back up Prince and was a member of the New Power generation. And then people like Alonzo Chadwick, who is, he's a premier vocalist in the Pacific Northwest. And then that opened up doors to internationally known people like Jenny Conley of the Decemberists and Martha Davis of the Motels. Those two people are also cancer survivors themselves. So it was just a very fun project that just really used the power of music to raise awareness for a new way to fight cancer. We launched the effort at South by Southwest in 2017. And that video that you're talking about, that got a lot of sharing on Facebook. And I thought that was really nice because within like 2 weeks or so, that video got passed around on Facebook about 30,000 times. We really used Facebook as the way to scale that message. And that felt really good to me. The other thing that came out of it was I needed something cool and edgy when I spoke at South by Southwest, and I wanted to connect into rock and roll. And so I needed something that would convey a message in a very succinct way. And so one of the singers on the album is also a designer. Her name is Michelle DeCourcy, and she designed the dress that Norah Jones wore when she won all the Grammys. And I just said, Michelle, can you help me create something really cool? What I see in my mind's eye is like, sequence me, just a simple message that I want to wear. And she came up with this punk rock kind of cool logo. And so I wore that T-shirt when I spoke, and that became kind of my call to action, really, along with that fax effort.
That's the T-shirt that looks like a heavy metal logo of some sort, right?
Yeah,
Sequence Me,
that's right.
That one?
Yeah.
I've seen your picture in it. And so it takes something that's fun and engaging and it draws attention, so you can get this very serious message across, rather than, people saying, I'm going to talk to you about cancer. And then some of the audience may not hear the message, but everybody needs to hear those messages. You never know. Yeah.
No, that's exactly right. And I think that also what I found is that, that kind of led to more and more conferences and other groups wanting me to come talk. And, I spoke at HIMSS, which is the big healthcare event. I spoke at Consumer Electronics Show, CES. I spoke at the Personalized Medicine Coalition at Harvard Medical School, South by Southwest, like I said. And what would happen is I'd wear that shirt and I'd get bombarded after I was done talking with, people that wanted to know more. And then a lot of people were also asking me, like, hey, can I get that shirt? How do I get that shirt? So I
was going to say, I bet you sold a lot of shirts.
Yeah. Well, what I did is I started a little movement and a website that anybody can go to. It's sequenceme.org. And that's really I built that to help scale the knowledge that I had and to really kind of accelerate patients' understanding of what this stuff is. So if you go to sequenceme.org, you can engage with what I think is the world's first HIPAA-compliant genomic speaking chatbot. So that chatbot will talk to you about genomics for cancer. And the whole goal is like, go to that site, learn about what this is, and then go demand it with your doctor. So if nobody's talking to you about this, learn about genomics, how it can open up new doors to fight cancer, and then go demand it. Demand that you can get your tumor sequenced and ask your doctors to open up some new doors that would allow you to fight it differently. That's kind of the whole goal.
That's just very, very interesting and inspiring how you are connecting physicians and people who work in clinical settings and patients themselves with these advances in technology and life sciences that, if overlooked, might cost somebody their life. So the way you're doing it is quite engaging. So thank you very much for speaking with us today, Bryce. I'm sorry we're out of time, but I'm hoping people will go to your website. What is it again? The sequence?
Yeah, sequenceme.org.
Sequenceme.org. And check out your videos on YouTube. That's for Bryce Olson, Olson. Thank you for speaking with us today, Bryce.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
We've been speaking today with Bryce Olson, global strategist at Intel, a musician, and stage 4 prostate cancer patient. This is Steve Smith at WCG Patient Radio. Special thanks to our executive producer, Lauren Osmore, and production staff, Isabel Andresen, Roxana Guilford-Blake, technical director, David Fogel, and head of studio, Amy Hutnick. Goodbye, everybody.